This video is going to look at the sources to do with Tiberius' relations with the Senate, equestrian plebs, and I will also cover the short source that talks about some of his building works. So the sources on Tiberius' relationship with the Senate is going to cover quite a lot of old ground in terms of other topics that we've already done. So a lot of these events will sound very familiar. It's just going to go into a little bit more detail, and for a change it is from Suetonius instead of Tacitus' view of the events. So we have Suetonius talking initially about when Tiberius first comes to power. So remember, when Tiberius first comes to power, there is this key question about whether or not he wanted to be emperor or he was quite a reluctant one. And this is what this source is going to sort of talk about as well. So initially we have Tiberius did not hesitate to exercise imperial power immediately by calling on the praetorians to provide him with a bodyguard. So clearly he wants to protect himself and he wants power and all the rest of it. And Suetonius points out that if you have a praetorian guard, that means you're basically emperor in appearance and in action. Yet for a long time elapsed before he assumed the position of emperor. I don't know why I didn't highlight that. So that kind of shows again his reluctance. When his friends urged him to accept it, he went through the farce of scolding with a suggestion, saying they did not realise what a monstrous beast the monarchy was, and kept the Senate guessing by his carefully evasive answers and hesitations. So because of his evasive answers and hesitations, this starts to make them quite annoyed and lose patience, and they start to openly taunt him with some sort of digs at the fact he's being a bit slow to do anything, but it shows he wants to be doing something as well. And as a result of these kind of senators becoming impatient with him and his reluctance, he shows this great show of reluctance and complaints. They were forcing him to become a miserable and overworked slave. Tiberius accepted the title of emperor. So again, this is the idea that he's maybe reluctant to rule, and the relationship between himself and the Senate at this particular point does not look particularly positive, because they want him to be emperor, supposedly. He doesn't seem to want to, supposedly, and his behaviour has annoyed them quite significantly as a result of it. So then we have Tiberius at first behaved with great discretion and almost as modestly as he never held public office. The many high honours voted to him accepted none but a few unimportant ones. So again, there's this reluctance to rule. This is going to wind up the Senate. He's trying to give him all the honours. And so he vetoes bills for dedication temples and priests to his divinity. He sort of talks about some games that he sort of refused to allow extra horses to run. He also there's proposals that all citizens should swear to approve his past and future actions, and the months of September and October should be renamed respectively Tiberius and Livius. These are also vetoed. So he's turning down a lot of honours. So when we do this kind of reluctance to rule and his character, you can use evidence from this section for this as well. Also, he declined to use to set the title imperator for his name, or have the civic crown, or be known as father of his country. And all of this he's sort of turning down, doesn't want to be called Augustus. And another example of reluctance to what we have here is on becoming emperor, he held no more than 3 consulships. One for a few days, the next for 3 months, and then another one for a few months again. So again, it appears that he doesn't want to be the ruler. He's turning loads of honours down, which the Senate are voting to him, so that's not going to necessarily give them the best of relationships. And then it carries on with this kind of idea. So such was his hatred of flatterers that he refused to let senators approach his litter. So that's like his carriage and his entourage. So again, this relationship's not very positive. He's not even wanting to speak to them. They try and call him my lord and master. He gave warning that such insults must be ever again thrown at him. And there's loads of examples where he just keeps throwing all the stuff back in the Senate's face. And obviously would irritate them somewhat, because they're trying to kind of react the way they did with Augustus. And it appeared that Augustus, although he turned this stuff down as well, was maybe a little bit better at turning it down compared to Tiberius. And Tiberius has this kind of more gruff character that it was kind of winding them up a little bit. What we do have is some evidence that they had a positive relationship. So Tiberius showed an almost excessive courtesy when addressing individual senators and the house as a body. So this again shows that he has quite a good relationship. He is courteous towards them. And then there's some sort of veiled criticisms of Tiberius' behaviour towards the Senate here. So he even made a pretense of restoring popular liberties by saying that the Senate and magistrates enjoyed their former dignities, conferring all public and private business, however important or unimportant to the House, asking for advice in every matter that concerned the national revenue, the education of monopolies, and the construction and repair of public buildings, He actually consulted them about the drafting or disbanding of troops, sort of where to put the auxiliaries, extension of military commands, the choice of generals, and this is all kind of like he's using the Senate. He seems to be giving them a lot of power. Suetonius is obviously suggesting he's only just doing this to make himself look good. It's very hard to tell Tiberius what his true motives were. But we have, the Senate is doing its job. They would like that. They're important. They're running the city and the empire. So they would have been satisfied with this particular arrangement. And again, he says he always entered the house unattended. So he's sort of acting like he's just another senator. He's no more important than anybody else. And then this kind of builds in. So if decrees were passed in defiance of his wishes, he abstained from complaint. So it gives you a couple of examples in here. One I've picked out at the bottom. Once it happened that the Senate put motion to the vote, Tiberius went into minority lobby and not a soul followed him. So he's quite happy, it would appear, for the Senate to disagree with whatever he is saying. So that could show a positive relationship, because obviously Tiberius isn't reacting negatively to all of this. He's allowing the Senate to be independent and to essentially do its job. The fact that nobody follows him in this situation could show that maybe he's not particularly popular, because no one is siding with Tiberius as emperor, which is also going to put him in a slightly difficult position. He left a great deal of public business to the magistrates and ordinary processes of law. The consuls grew so important again. So we've got some evidence here about administration of the city as well, and the same with this stuff up here. It's about administration, which is like a key theme that we have to look at. So he's leaving it to sort of the Senate and to everybody else who needs to be doing their job, which you could say is quite a good thing to do. These guys, that is their role after all. It's not all the power in one man's hands. And it does show that maybe that Tiberius wasn't after sole power after all. And then it carries on. Some governors of consular rank earned a rebuff by addressing dispatches to Tiberius rather than the Senate. So he even tells off, provincial leaders for writing to him instead of the Senate. He's like, you talk to the Senate, not me. Is that a reluctance to rule, or is he just trying to flatter the Senate? Probably a bit of both. We do have that he attended the funerals of important citizens. So again, that would sort of show his support of the Senate, good relationship. Never presumed on his position of riding roughshod over men of lesser rank. So he's not sort of acting above anybody else. I suppose this probably would have surprised the Senate a little bit, because obviously, Augustus was never above anybody, although he was. And maybe he was better at doing it, who knows. But we do have kind of Tiberius maybe following in Augustus's behaviour and trying to treat the Senate relatively well and give them lots of power. And then he says, as Suetonius points out, there's a gradual change in all of this. So very gradually Tiberius showed that he was the real ruler of the empire. So now he's wanting to take power. It's not about being reluctant anymore. At first his policy was not always consistent. It's a bit of a dig at him. He nevertheless took considerable pains to be helpful and to further the national interest. So this is some praise here. He's trying to run the empire properly. He's trying to run the city well. It would just appear that because it's Tiberius, people don't like him because he's a bit grumpy. At first, too, he intervened in matters of state only when abuses had to be checked. So he offers to sit on tribunals against the magistrates. Sometimes he goes to court if he thinks that the court case is not going in the right direction. Suddenly appear and address the jury either from the floor or from the tribunal, so to make sure that people were not kind of being acquitted because of their family name. So again, this is all about good administrative stuff. The courts are working relatively properly. He's running the city quite well. He's making sure there's law and order. Undertook to arrest any decline in public morality due to negligence or license. So he's doing very much what Augustus did. Augustus passed morality laws. Tiberius is making sure the morality laws are enforced. He went to court sometimes to ensure people were sort of tried properly, like Augustus did. There's nothing particularly different here than what we've already looked at in terms of Augustus. What we do have is no magnificent public builds marked his reign. So this is why I included building works within this, because it mentions it in a couple of places, and there's a really short source on it later. So he's not really a public works builder kind of guy. That's definitely more of Augustus' and Agrippa's thing. Undertakings, the erection of Augustus' temple and the restoration of Pompey's theatre. In fact, they remain uncompleted. So he doesn't even finish the building works that he starts. He hardly ever attended public shows given by others, because he doesn't give any himself, so he doesn't want to go to them. I kind of understand Tiberius on a spiritual level here. Though reliving the financial distress of a few senators at his succession, he avoided having to repeat this generous act. So obviously Augustus would help senators who got into financial straits. Tiberius was less happy to do so, and he sort of said, he had to prove to the Senate they're not born responsible for their financial embarrassment. So this kind of ended up with many senators not wanting to ask for help, whether or not they had money to feed or not. They were reluctant to go to Tiberius for aid because he just wasn't willing to give the money, because they had to very humiliatory, is that even a word? Anyway, go through their kind of finances and prove that they hadn't, gambled it away or wasted money on stupid works. So we have Suetonius being sort of positive, sort of negative at the same time, typical of a Suetonius source. And then we have Tacitus. So Tacitus, we know, doesn't like Tiberius at all. So we can have a far more negative version of the same thing, of the same events that we've just talked through. Oops. So we have evidence again that Tiberius rejected the title father of his country, even though it had been repeatedly pressed upon him by the people, so that could annoy the plebs. He disregarded the vote of the Senate. He failed to inspire the belief his sentiments were not monarchical. So he again is acting like he doesn't want to be an emperor, but people don't really think it's true. So he resurrected the Lex Majestatis, which covers lots of offences: betrayal of an army, seditious incitement of the populace, any acting short of official, maladministration, diminishing the majesty of the Roman nation. So he's enforcing some laws, which is a good administration, but obviously the law is really broad and allows you to put down any sort of form of opposition that might appear. So is that sort of an evidence again that Tiberius is trying to take control of the city, or is he just trying to run the city properly? Down to interpretation, I would argue. So there's just referring back to what sort of Augustus had done very similarly. We'll just skip over that bit. So not long afterwards, the letter from Tiberius apprised the Senate that Africa had been once disturbed by an inroad of Tacrophanus. So we've got him, pops up yet again. And that he sort of tells the Senate to use their judgment in choosing a proconsul to go and deal with it. And there's this kind of weird discussion between Sextus Pompeius and Marcus Lepidus. Obviously not the ones from section B. These are different ones, because, it would be helpful to have different names. But no, we must have exactly the same names of people who've already studied. But anyway, there's a discussion between the two, and essentially it's ended up they can't decide, and it's decided to leave the emperor to choose a man for the post. So he wants the Senate to do it. Senate can't decide, so he's forced to make the decision instead. And then there's this sort of really unexciting section about this Lepidus, Manius Lepidus, who I don't know why he's telling you about him. I just skipped it because there's absolutely nothing of relevance, so I'm going to go across. And then we have some more examples of Tiberius kind of intervening when necessary, or not, depending. So when members then expressed the view that Serenus should be punished according to the ancestral custom, he sought to mitigate the odium by interposing his veto. So we have again Tiberius interacting when he has to stop people being prosecuted fairly or unfairly, depending how you look at it. So this again, is he reluctant to rule if he's taking action to stop people being prosecuted? Probably not. Again, there's another court case here when Caesar, with considerable asperity and unusual frankness, took the side of the accusers. So he again intervenes in this particular court case. He spares Gaius Cominius, a Roman knight convicted of a poetical lampoon of himself. So he'd written, basically taking the mick out of the emperor in some kind of poetry form, and the emperor saved him. But then we also have when Publius, Silelius, I think, an old quaestor of Germanicus, was about to escape with banishment from Italy, having been convicted by judicial corruption. He moved for his deportation to an island. This intervention is criticised. So he is intervening, so this is him being an emperor, but he's also intervening in cases where the Senate's made these rulings, and they would not have made them very happy that he's intervening in senatorial cases, particularly when he keeps changing the outcome. The same penalty was invoked on Firmius, that's a great name, Catus, member of the Senate, for laying a false charge of treason against his wife. So again, he's intervening, making people probably quite annoyed while he's doing it. Anyway, while Tiberius, rather than trust anyone with the conduct of war, suppressed our losses, so Tiberius is taking control here, because the Senate appears to be kind of a bit panicked about what to do. They were obviously worried about Sejanus. The story in this section jumps around, as you can tell by the numbers, because the sources didn't quite fit anywhere else, so I kind of lumped them all into the Senate section. What we do have is the fact that the Senate is trying to get hold of Tiberius. But you remember at this point, Sejanus is kind of controlling all the information going to Tiberius, so this would have weakened the relationship between Tiberius and the Senate, which is why I think I put it in this section. So that's why that one's talking about. I'm trying to remember what this bit says. But we have all senators of consular rank, a large proportion of ex-praetors, many ordinary members, even vied with each other in rising above the most repulsive and extravagant resolutions. So again, they're sort of trying to create these over-the-top rulings in favour of Tiberius, and Tiberius, being the grump that he is, didn't always accept them. So is the Senate trying to make sure they had a good relationship with Tiberius? Don't know. Is the Senate just trying to look good? Probably. So like I said, it's mixed messages on the Senate. I'm hoping you're getting the general gist of that. Then we have Velius, who obviously is going to be super positive about Tiberius. So Caesar deified his father not so much by imperial decree as his own display of religious devotion. He did not call him a god, he made him a god. So we got some evidence about Tiberius's religious policy, which links in with the previous video. Or next video, sorry. Respect has been restored to public life. Political conspiracy eliminated from it. Not sure that's true. Scheming from high office had been banished from elections. Again, not sure that's true. Factional strife from the Senate. Definitely not true. But what we do have is the idea that obviously Tiberius has restored Rome even better than Augustus had. Everything's perfect. Magistrates have recovered their authority. The Senate's former majesty and the law courts their solemnity. I can never say that word. Riots in the theatre are a thing of the past. Everything's great under Tiberius. Isn't it amazing? The price of corn has never been more stable. Like, the world is an incredible place because Tiberius is on the throne. So we've got some positive evidence about his relationship because he's able to sort of use the Senate correctly, and they have their power, the law courts are working, and administration of the city is going really well because Tiberius is clearly quite fabulous. Alright, last section for the Senate then. He is criticised when there are some of those early mutinies of the German legions. So he's criticised he ought to have gone in person and confronted the rebels with the majesty of the empire. But obviously he didn't. He sent Germanicus and Drusus to deal with the situations. We have the idea that to all his criticism opposed an immutable and rooted determination not to endanger himself and the empire by leaving the centre of affairs. So he doesn't want to put himself in danger, and if he doesn't want to leave the centre of affairs, that is kind of a bit of a reference to the Senate and its role. Does he not want to leave because he doesn't trust the Senate? Or he just doesn't think they're very good at their job? Or does he just want to make sure he doesn't hurt himself? Very, very difficult to judge. I will leave that up to you in terms of how you interpret that particular sentence. And then we have a really short section on the equestrians. I'll stop saying because it's really annoying, sorry. So we have Cassius Cordus was convicted of extortion. We also have, I did it again, sorry, Lucius Ennius, a Roman knight, found himself indicted for treason on the ground he'd turned a statute of the emperor to the promiscuous uses of household silver. Sorry, that made me chuckle. Promiscuous uses of household silver. I think essentially he melted down a load of silver and was using it, to buy pretty stuff. Just the phrasing of that fantastic is absolutely hilarious. The fact that he, melted down the statute of the emperor is the issue. And when it goes to trial, Tiberius forbade the entry of the case. So it's all done behind closed doors. And in the end, the decision is then vetoed again. So he's interfering. Is he promoting Roman knights? Not really. Don't they seem not to like him? A little bit. But he certainly seems to be protecting them for whatever reason. Probably because they're used for the administration of the empire and they're really good at their job. So it makes sense to keep them on side. Now we have a section of Suetonius, keep scrolling up and down, which is going to talk about his relationship with the plebs. This is nice and short and sweet. So we have Tiberius showed a large-scale generosity no more than twice, so he's not a big spender. So he offered a public loan of 1,000,000 gold pieces free of interest for 3 years. That's nice of him. He also paid for the rebuilding of certain blocks of houses. That's a typo. Sorry. Stupid thing. There we go. On the Calaian Hill, which had been destroyed by fire. So that's good, helping the city and all that. Again, this is an emergency measure. So he's not doing it necessarily because of, goodness of his own heart, but because he has to do it. So he initially doubled the legacies bequeathed by Augustus to the army, but then never... What on earth are these typos? Sorry. Never gave them more beyond their pay. Okay. He granted few veterans their discharge. The only free money granted to any province got him... What? Hang on. Granted? That sentence does not make sense. The only free money grant any province got from him, there we go, sorry, was when an earthquake destroyed some cities in Asia Minor. So he's not a big spender. He spends money when he has to, but he's not like Augustus giving out money left, right and centre. He's a bit of a miser. I wish I was like Tiberius. So then we also have evidence for when Tiberius dies. So the first news of his death causes such joy at Rome that people ran about yelling, "To the Tiber with Tiberius." There were also loud threats to drag his body off with a hook and fling it on the stairs of mourning. Remember, the stairs of mourning is where he was killing people with the treason trials. So clearly the people don't like him. They didn't like his rule. Put it into context of the treason trials, totally makes sense. And he also didn't give out the plebs loads of money, so they're not gaining anything from him beyond what Vellius says about there being good corn. Or grain, sorry. So it's not a surprise that the relationship is not good, and then thus the hatred of Tiberius grew hotter than ever. So they don't like him. He's cruel. He's just a nasty guy. The plebs are very happy that he is dead. He is dead and he has died. We could tie into sort of his relationship with the Senate, the Equestrians and plebs, his building works. We have Vellius, so we know it's going to be positive. So what wonderful public buildings he erected in his own name of the relatives. Well, from, I think it was Suetonius, they only built 2 things. He didn't even finish them, so that's a load of rubbish. He's now building a temple to his father with lavish expenditure. Yeah, we didn't finish it. Restoration of the fire-damaged buildings of Gnaeus Pompey's splendid tribute to generosity of spirit. Well, you've just read a load of sources that showed that he clearly wasn't generous. So Vellius is just putting a very, very positive spin on Tiberius's behaviour. And as you will notice as I scroll down, that is the last video, on Tiberius. That is the end of the sources on Tiberius, which means we will be moving on to looking at Caligula after half term.